Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. To shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have with us over the phone our dear guest, Dr. Ayman Ghonem, economic expert. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, madam. How do you do?
Well, Dr. Ghonem, how did you see the importance of Cairo hosting the Russian-African second meeting?
Well, actually, the Russia-Africa Partnership Forum is an institutional framework that implements the outcomes and decisions and I can say the political commitments that are expressed in Russia-Africa summits and transform them into real projects, tangible projects and investments in the key sectors of development and cooperation between Africa and Russia. Of course, these key sectors include the energy infrastructure, food security, water security, the industrial development, which is one of the pressing needs and developmental priorities for Africa, capacity building. Actually, Egypt is now hosting or has hosted the second ministerial conference of the Russia-Africa Partnership. And this actually supports, first of all, the strategic weight of Egypt within Africa. The leadership of Egypt in the African country, and that's being focused, and Egypt now is playing a leading role in the African Union under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Egypt has been very active in speaking the voice of the southern countries, of course, including the African countries, in their desire and in their aspirations, especially to achieve sustainable development, to modernize their infrastructure, and most importantly, to obtain sustainable finance at just and equitable terms and at fair prices.
Yes, Cairo have acknowledged during the conference that despite the efforts by African states, the continent continues to face significant development challenges, including weak infrastructure, limited financing and high risks. What steps are needed to be taken to overcome the obstacles in these fields?
Well, to start with, actually, the financing needs for Africa, they represent a pressing need for the whole continent, because if we look at the requirements to modernize the infrastructure in Africa and the related financial needs, they have around financing needs of 130 to 170 billion United States dollars per annum. Now, African countries can procure finance between 80 to 90 billion dollars per annum, so there is an annual funding gap of around 40 to 90 billion dollars. Of course, this funding gap is distributed amongst the sectors that represent the priorities for the development in Africa, mainly, of course, energy, around 30 to 40%, transportation around also 30 to maybe 40%, water, sanitation, and sewage around 15 to 20%, and the remaining is directed toward the digital infrastructure and digital transformation. So the financing needs for Africa, they represent a pressing need, and that's why President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, not only in this summit but also in the previous one, during his participation in the BRICS summit and in the G20 summit, he has been voicing the voice of the South and the requirements and the aspirations of the South to get finance at equitable and just terms and conditions. And this time the President also, he has presented a global view for the development in Africa. We can call it the Egyptian theory of development, actually, in Africa, because he presented important pillars for the development, mainly, of course, the stability, the importance of stability, economic and political stability as a prerequisite for investment, and the importance of the stability to reduce the credit risk of the African countries, so supporting the ability of the African countries to procure finance Also, the President spoke about the need for industrializing Africa, the need to break the cycle of exporting raw materials at low prices and then importing them as finished goods at high prices, and doing so the African countries would run huge budget deficits and balance of payment deficits. And this is actually one of the main reasons for the sovereign debt problem in Africa. So Africa needs to break this cycle through industrialization and through modernizing its infrastructure and through cooperation. Also, the President spoke about the need to foster political solutions within the African Union over military approaches, and Egypt is giving a very good example in its approach to solve the disputes regarding the River Nile, the disputes on the Renaissance Dam with Ethiopia. Egypt consistently resorted to the political means and to the peaceful means. Finally, Egypt focuses on the respect of sovereignty and the shared values and the non-interference in the internal affairs of all the African countries and all the countries in the world, actually. And this is one of the pillars and tenets of the Egyptian diplomacy that's highly regarded by the whole world.
Yes, Dr. Ghonem, how do you weigh the importance of the Russian-African ties for both sides?
Well, actually, Russia is one of the important economic and political powers and military powers in the world, and Russia has been interested in cooperating with Africa, and Russia has been regarding Egypt as the gateway for Africa, both politically and economically. Of course, the strategic location of Egypt in North Africa, in Northeast Africa, and the Egyptian role in promoting stability and promoting security in Africa, and the Egyptian historical role in fostering and helping the African liberation movement, and now the Egyptian leading role in voicing the sound of the southern countries and their rights and aspirations to get finance at just and equitable terms. So all these factors play an important role in the perception of Russia for Egypt as the gateway of Africa. Egypt is also the important variable and number in the equation of stability and peace in the Middle East, and this was perceived and proven actually in the Sharm el-Sheikh summit regarding the ceasefire in Gaza, and we've seen all the leaders of the world acknowledging the Egyptian role in this regard. So all these political influences, they add to the economic power of Egypt, and they add to the weight of Egypt, and they allow Egypt to enter into economic cooperation with just and with favorable terms with the major powers in the world, of course including Russia, but also the Western powers, including the United States, Western Europe, Britain, as well as the Eastern powers, including, of course, the BRICS countries, Russia, India, and China.
Yes, Dr. Ghonem, how do you list the reasons of the weak international intra-African trade compared to the intra-trade in other continents?
Well, actually, you are tapping a very important aspect, which is the weak intra-African trade. Actually, the bilateral trade between the African countries does not exceed 15% of African international trade. That's compared to around 40% of intra-Asia trade and around 60% of intra-Europe trade. The main reason here is that the African countries, they are still unindustrialized countries. They are still exporters of raw material, and they still import the finished goods at high prices and running high deficits in their balance of payments and in their budget. Also, the African countries have a problem in infrastructure, especially the roads and the railways. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi spoke of this. He said that there is a problem, there is still a logistical problem in transporting the goods and services between African countries at economical terms. The problem here is that the African countries still have stronger ties with the Western world than the ties between themselves. And I believe that, and many analysts actually believe that the African Union has to focus in the coming period and the coming decade on increasing the integration, the economic integration between the African countries based on their shared values and based on political consensus. And in increasing the ties between the African countries and all the major economic powers in the world, not only the Western world, but also the Eastern world, the BRICS countries, Russia, India, and China.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your valuable information. Dr. Ayman Ghonem, the economic expert. We really had the pleasure to have this phone with you. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and I'm going to be back with you.